Which villain do you sympathize for, and why? Balder from God of War 4. He was the product of an unloving and abusive marriage between Odin and Freya, and Freya, after the end of their marriage to Odin, was stripped away of everything she had: her freedom, the trust of her people, her spirit. The only thing she had left was Balder, but seeing that he would die a needless death in the future, she cursed him with immortality, resulting in him literally not being able to feel anything. This curse, while meant to protect him, drove him insane with rage against his mother. And in the end, was what caused his needless death. Skeletor, the true heir to the throne and rightful ruler of Eternia, passed up for being mixed race, so he acted out, causing an accident that disfigured and fatally wounded him. He was left for dead by a family with magic powers, having to resort to serving evil, and living out the rest of his days as a skeletal shadow of his former self. The guy in Meet the Robinsons, poor fucker. Goob. Doofenshmirtz. He was a hard-working man in a difficult childhood, always being overshadowed by his younger brother and a baking soda volcano. He has broke the boundaries of science. That almost seems impossible, but is ignored throughout his career as a scientist. As every man does, he seems to have trouble finding a place in the world, so he tries to commit to poetry only for that dream to be snatched away and crushed in front of him. He was a man with a vision, a dream to take control of a small government, to change the lives of many surroundings and many people. But desperate times call for desperate measures as he's forced to take drastic measures to fulfill his dreams. He wanted to be a loving father and give his child the childhood he never had. He was a visionary at his time that society didn't allow, which demonizes him to a gross pulsating image of a man that cold brought hope and light to a better future. His mother didn't even show up to his birth. King Dedede from the Kirby franchise. The dude gets possessed every Tuesday to the point where he's not doing any evil villain stuff. Also he cares and tries to protect his kingdom. Just take a look at Kirby's adventure. He took the Star Rod from the Fountain of Dreams to protect Dreamland from Nightmare himself. Wow. Nobody has said Wally Coyote. That poor guy's entire purpose in life is to fail. 9 unbreakable rules of Wild Coyote. I never considered him to be evil. It's the Roadrunner. Geo Coyote. Mr. Freeze. Just a guy willing to do whatever it takes to save his wife from dying. It felt so bad in the Batman animated series when Nora Fries is revived and leaves him. Medusa, punished for being raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple and being beautiful. Her 2 sisters stood by her side through thick and thin and fought to keep her safe from all intruders. Perseus creeps in while they were fast asleep on a bed and silently beheads Medusa. He then cowardly escapes, leaving the cries of her sisters, and becomes a hero. I really wish this story didn't exist, or that she was accurately portrayed not as the villain, but a victim. The moral of this story is, the gods are assholes. The boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, because she was only a villain, because she had to be. That was the role assigned to her. She was loyal to her mission, and to her country until the very end. Snake. History will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot. Plus, if you beat the entire game with only silenced trank guns and without being seen, you get invisible camo. The Wicked Witch of the West. Dorothy killed her sister, stole her shoes, and refused to give them back. Young woman travels to a strange land, kills and robs the first person she meets, then teams up with 3 strange men to kill again. Captain Hook. Captain Hook must remember not to scratch his toes. Captain Hook must watch out and never pick his nose. Captain Hook must be gentle when he shakes your hand. Captain Hook must be careful, opening sardine cans and playing tag and pouring tea and turning pages of his book. Lots of folks I'm glad I ain't, but mostly Captain Hook. Shel Silverstein. Just recently watched Disney's Peter Pan for the first time since I was a child. Not sure if it is a sign I'm old, but my girlfriend and I both agreed that we didn't think Hook was that bad and that maybe Peter is actually the real villain. He just bullies Hook and antagonizes him the whole time. Edit. Misspelled Disney because of my big sausage fingers. Spoilers for a 24-year-old movie ahead. The villain from The Rock, General Hummel, was just trying to secure military benefits for his soldiers killed in Black Ops authorized by the US government. This money was supposed to come from a slush fund from illegal weapon sales also perpetrated by the government itself, and his threat against San Francisco was initially a bluff. He was basically trying to look after his men, but became desperate after exhausting the proper channels. Edit. Why did this blow up? Woke up to 200 notifications. Jeez. General Hummel was an anti-hero rather than a villain. I think he was probably one of the most conflicted and well-written / performed movie antagonists of the 90s. Hades. In the Greek mythology, he pretty much drew the short end of the stick in becoming the lord of the underworld. Tom from Tom and Jerry. I agree with you. For me, Jerry was the villain. That little fucking rat. Krank. The man just pulled the wrong lever. Krank wasn't a villain. He was a sweet man. Cusco wasn't the good guy either. Jack Nicholson in As Good As It Gets. People don't understand how bad real OCD is, and how it changes people and the pain they suffer. If you hate which side of the bed you sleep on, and think it's OCD, maybe it is, but you have no idea how bad it gets. So damn true. When people are like, I have to push that chair in, I'm so OCD lol. Yeah, you have no idea the mental havoc and destruction it causes. The Lords of Cinder, each and every one of them gave their lives to save the world again and again, even though it was more of just keeping Wynn's dream alive and not actually saving the world. Except old Rick, eating children is kind of fucked up. Dark Souls is full of absolutely fantastic backstory for their bosses. I mean, a few fights if after the Ulasal DLC she only attacks you to stop you from facing the abyss and going mad like Artorias, making killing her that much harder to do. Ice King. I mean, before he got the crown, he was a really good guy. The crown messes up anyone who wears it, and only wore it to protect Marceline. Dr. Octopus. Otto Octavius is just as smart as Peter Parker or Tony Stark, but because he grew up in an abusive home, he never learned enough confidence to be endearing like these two, and no matter how much he applied himself, other geniuses kept belittling him and brushing him aside as an uncharismatic lame-ass nerd. Basically, he's a version of Peter Parker that didn't have a social support network and turned evil due to years of being unappreciated and having his work constantly overshadowed. Tom from Tom and Jerry. As a child, I always thought he was bad and Jerry was the good one. Later the show's creators said it's the opposite. Also, the actual plot of the story is that Tom likes Jerry and they're friends. But if he doesn't chase Jerry, the owner will think he's lazy and useless and throw him out and get a new cat who'd probably catch and kill Jerry. Tom, being his friend, doesn't want that to happen, so he chases him but keeps failing to catch him just to please his owner. He was never meant to be the villain. They had some fucking battles though. He'll never forget the episode that depicts them in old France fighting as musketeers. Jerry wins and Tom gets sent to the guillotine. Jerry saluted him on the way out. http://yahoo.be/m0qjk6cujc. Invaders in. I just want him to win so badly because I want every single member of his species, including the tallest, to realize he is somewhat capable, although he is at times his own worst enemy. Also Doofenshmirtz because despite his increasingly tragic backstories he was an amazing father to Vanessa. Zim even put the fires out after Operation Impending Doom 1. Robbie Rotten. How dare that damn Sporticus try to get me off the couch and be active. Let's be honest, Stefan turned out to be such a good and beloved person even when singing about literally being a villain. Robbie will never feel like a bad guy to anybody. He was number one. Team Rocket Jesse and James. If you've seen Pokemon episodes, this needs no explanation. Blasting off again. Point and P4. Frankenstein's monster. The dude was created by a power-hungry narcissist who chopped up a bunch of dead bodies and sewed them together so he could brag about creating life and elevate himself to god level. Then, the narcissist rejects him for being ugly and leaves him to fend for himself. To make matters worse, the whole entire town/world also rejects him for being ugly, assumes that he's a monster because he looks like one, and physically attacks him. He eventually takes shelter near an isolated cottage, inhabited by a family. He befriends the blind father, and does favors for the family. He grows fond of them, and feels like he finally has found people willing to accept him. But the rest of the family were afraid of him, and one day, he finds out that they fled their home. Feeling hurt, he sets out to find the narcissist who promises that he'll create a partner for him, so he won't be lonely. Then the narcissist changes his mind, and destroys all of his research that helped him create the monster. The monster kills everyone in the narcissist's family, so he would know how it felt to be alone. Then, he vows to kill himself, because he essentially became the monster that he was made out to be. It's such a tragic story about love and abandonment, but everyone gets so wrapped up in the horror aspect of it. I always felt sorry for the monster, because at the end of the day, he just wanted a friend to accept him for who he is. I love that the story is about deciding if Frankenstein created a monster or is a monster. You grow up with the image of a dark tower with lightning and scared villagers, but the book doesn't have that shit at all. It's about a man playing God and rejecting his creation upon seeing how disgusting it was. Frankenstein's monster grew sour in resentment and asked for only one thing: someone to love and accept him. Being denied that creates a nearly eternal power struggle between each character. I absolutely loved Frankenstein. One of the best books of the millennia. Sandman from Spider-Man 3. Yes, he killed Uncle Ben, but damn. His last scene in the movie makes me emotional when I remember it. Dude just wanted to help his daughter, man. His confession with Peter just shows how remorseful he is for doing that to Peter. Spider-Man 3 could have been good if Sam Raimi got in his way, but fucking Sony wanted to cramp in Venom, making SPM3 a villain overload. Zuko. My first time watching, even before his arc, it was just so heart-wrenching seeing him doing everything just to be loved and accepted by his people, his father. The best redemption arc I've ever seen anywhere, TBH. Hades from Disney's Hercules. Pretty shit that he got the underworld, while his brothers got sky and sea. Megamind because let's be honest, he was only the villain because of bullies and an overachieving Superman wannabe. Edit 1. Thanks for all the upvotes. Edit 2. I have not watched the movie in a long time, so this response is coming from a 11-year-old me. So those saying this is a terrible response can't deal with this how they will. I really enjoyed that movie. On one hand, a sequel would be interesting, but on the other hand, you can't do the villain turning into a hero, because he needed to be story at times with a character. Scar from Full Metal Alchemist. He does redeem himself throughout the anime. He ends up stopping the cycle of hatred around him. Dr. Doofenshmirtz from the second dimension. He lost his choo-choo. Maybe if the first Doofenshmirtz lost his choo-choo, he would taken over his tree state area. Narlan's Harvey Dent. Edit. My most upvoted comment ever. Thanks guys. Aaron Eckhart really knocked it out of the park with that performance. He was amazing. Unfortunately he was overshadowed by Heath Ledger, but he was still so good. Luke Castellan. He was manipulated by Kronos, but ended up pulling through and sacrificing himself for the greater good. Same for Selenia, but she was never really a villain. If you have read Trials of Apollo, it provides many not so subtle references to gods being absolute dicks and Apollo realizing just how bad the demigods have it down on Earth. The Grinch. Everybody was a bag of dicks to him, and really he just wanted to belong. The Grinch never hated Christmas. He hated people, and that is fair. Anakin went from child slave to child soldier, and then had every one of his concerns and fears brushed aside. Probably still doesn't excuse the child slaughter though. I was going to say Darth Vader. A man brought down by the emotions he felt for every woman in his life. First his mom, then his wife, and in the very end, his daughter. Galactus, the devourer of worlds. He destroys worlds and saps up the life force of entire populations, but after all he's just an integral part of the universe and is required as other primal forces. In one of the Squirrel Girl comics it revealed that Galactus still follows his promise to never devour Earth. He just knows that Whenever he shows up, one of the heroes will find an unoccupied planet for him to eat. Invading Earth is just his way of getting takeout. The bad guy in Shazam. The original Shazam guy just straight up told a kid that he was worthless. Like it's normal to be tempted to greed and shit like that when you're a kid. But just cause the kid was no exception. Black Shazam told him he was worthless and ditched him. For real. If I had a guy tell me I was going to grow up to be nothing when I was a kid, that would have fucked me up too. Something I liked about that movie was also when the MC gets his powers. It wasn't because he was shown to be pure of heart, but because the wizard was desperate enough he just had to trust whoever the spell brought him was a good enough person to be the hero. Initially the protagonist isn't heroic with his powers or personality, but he grows to be. Similarly, the bad guy got treated like garbage by his family growing up, and if the wizard had tried to nurture an apprentice instead of just finding one magically, the villain could have turned out as a decent hero. Plankton. He is adorable. Vulnerable too. Imagine being an inch tall your whole life. Pain/Nagato. He was being manipulated from the very start, lost his parents and friends to a war being fought in his village, and thought his whole mission was to change the world when in reality it was just to do someone else's dirty work. I think it's hilarious how Nagato was manipulated by Obito, who was manipulated by Madara, who was manipulated by Zetsu. None of them were truly bad people, they just bought into a lie. Vanilla from the Umbrella Academy. Girl was left out of everything since her powers were opus. Even as she grew up, none of her siblings really took the time to get to know her. By the time she needed help with her power, instead of helping, her brother decided to lock her in the same soundproof room her dad used to put her in. Luther literally caused the apocalypse. Edit. Typist since I wrote this at 1 AM. Exactly this. She was a product of her environment. Her father was the complete reason she ended up the way she did. She never would have been involved with Leonard if she has just been included and had felt loved by her family. Doofenshmirtz. I mean, even his mom missed his birth. He was a bad guy, but he still took care of his daughter as a single dad and would cook and babysit. He was a great dad. Dr. Horrible. Captain Hammer was a douche. And how bad can a guy be if his best friend is named Moist? Kerry cause when you're a 16-year-old teenager girl and everyone treats you like shit for no reason. And when it's prom, and you find out you win prom queen, but it's just a cruel joke and pig blood is dumped on you. Who wouldn't do what she did? Jason. Being bullied by a group of kids cause of how you look, then pushed into a lake and drown when counselors are supposed to help you. This has got a lot of upvotes. Did I actually make sense?